This is The Sports Life.
Here we go. Aaron Craft, high on the right, 5 seconds left. Craft, top of the key. Craft, still dribbling, 3 seconds left. Craft shoots it high on the right for three. Yes! Aaron Craft with a tenth of seconds left. He knocks it down from right of the key, 78-75. Ohio State, as Aaron Craft in the base of the defense sticks a major league basket down.
Paul Keels talking about Aaron Craft being Aaron Craft. And welcome into our Sports Life show. And this week we have a fun one lined up for you. And even though I'm not the video king between Dalton and I've often wondered, how do you get in the game? Well, we're going to talk about that this week.
That's going to be a lot of fun. And also, there's a myriad of topics and hot-button dialogue things that are happening around college athletics. Automatic bids for the college football playoff. Expand March Madness. To go through this buffet of hot topics, we're going to have Bill Bender of the Sporting News to kind of walk us through some of it. And as we continue to highlight some of the big-time programs that look to be shaping up to be major contenders in the Big Ten for football this upcoming year, we turn our attention to Happy Valley, and the voice of the Pitt and State Nittany Lions, Steve Jones, breaks it all down for us.
Well, as we count down the years to kick off this year, 2025, we've now worked our way to some magic moments in 2013.
And what a great way to get it started with that Aaron Craft bucket at the very top of the show. Well, the basketball season ends up belonging to the Indiana Hoosiers when it comes to the regular season. Tom Crean and Indiana end up winning the Big Ten title, and it came down to pretty much the finish of the regular season with a huge win over the Michigan Wolverines. Here's the voice of Indiana, Don Fisher.
Indiana gets the rebound. Zeller has the ball with Jordan Halls. Indiana can take the lead. Now, Yogi Ferrell drives it to the right side. Works down by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores! Cody Zeller, his 25th point of the afternoon. And that's a season high in points. Now, 10 seconds to go. Trey Burke takes it to the left side. Down inside he goes. He puts it up with the left hand. No good. Tipped up. And no good again. Batted away. Tipped into Cody. Indiana's going to win it. They win it. Indiana has won it. Holy cow, what a finish. Indiana beats Michigan 72-71, and they win the Big Ten title outright.
Don Fisher is jacked. They won.
How do you not love listening to an excited Don Fisher?
I just love listening to him any time of day. I don't care. He's just wonderful. And Tom Crean was head coach then. They would win again in 2016. That would be 2 Big Ten titles under Coach Crean, and by 17, he's gone.
It's just wild to think about what it's been like for Indiana basketball. Hey, and we should also mention, things worked out all right for that Michigan team. They ended up going to the national championship game, lost to Louisville, which is now vacated. So all pretty good things happening with Big Ten basketball in that season. And there were some special things happening in Big Ten football in the year 2013. This was a year to remember if you're a Michigan State Spartan because well, for starters, you're Big Ten champs, and you end up beating the Buckeyes led by Urban Meyer in 2013 in the Big Ten title game. Some critical plays laid, stopping Braxton Miller on a 4th down and a Jeremy Langford touchdown that sealed the deal for the green and white. Here's the plays called by the voice of the Spartans, George Blaha.
Spencer set short side right. Braxton Miller will run that way. He's hit. He's hit down. He didn't make it. He is hit down. Didn't make it. Denikos Allen with the play of the night for the Michigan State Spartans. Down, down, down goes the Buckeye. Denikos Allen with a huge play on Braxton Miller. 2.5 to go in the game. 2nd and 2 Spartans at the Ohio State 26, leading 27-24. Offset eye left, Pendleton in front of Jeremy. Hand off to Jeremy, up the gut to the 15.
He's on his feet, George!
He's on his feet! He's into the end zone! Touchdown MSU! The Spartan sideline explodes! Everybody in green and white at Lucas Oil Stadium going crazy! Jeremy Langford up the gut for 26 and probably a game-clinching touchdown.
George Blaha, Jason Strayhorn on that call for Michigan State. The game, Dalton, was a little bit like a basketball game. It was a game of runs. MSU had a big run. Ohio State had the big run, but MSU had the biggest run, the final 10 points of that game.
And the biggest run literally with that Langford touchdown you just heard a moment ago to seal the deal. And by the way, that doesn't just make Michigan State Big Ten champions. That also sent them to the Rose Bowl. The 100th Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. Michigan State and Stanford comes down to the very end. And yet again, it's the defense coming up huge with a 4th down stop. Kyler Ellsworth would send the Stanford Cardinal back and give Michigan State a Rose Bowl championship.
Michigan State could stop it once more. 4th and a yard for Stanford at their 34. Spartans 24, Stanford 20. Minute and 46 to go in the Rose Bowl. Hogan under center. Long count. Hands to Gaffney. He's in. He won't go anywhere. He won't go anywhere. Michigan State stops Stanford and stuffs them at the line of scrimmage. And the Spartans are on their way to a win in the Rose Bowl.
Woo! And they were. And one of the interesting things about that game, historically speaking, as was mentioned, the 100th Rose Bowl, it will also be the last time that it would be like the traditional Rose Bowl, a champion from the Big Ten and a champion from the Pac-12. So when we come back with more of the Sports Life, we're going to visit with Bill Bender of the Sporting News, talk about this crazy thing called NCAA sports. But first, this time out.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little? But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Every kid deserves a chance to feel safe, to have their own bed, to be loved and cared for. That's why I love my foster parents. They make me feel like part of the family.
Raise hope and foster dreams for one of 13,000 Michigan children in foster care. Visit michigan.gov/hope for a home or call 855-MICH-KIDS. That's 855-MICH-KIDS. Sponsored by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of uncertainty lurking under your hood. You know the feeling. I know I do. That sudden sinking sensation when you see a check engine light or your car unexpectedly breaks down and you're faced with sky-high repair bills. It's time to shield against unexpected repairs with CarShield. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let the fear of a breakdown keep you up at night. Trust the Shield, CarShield, and say goodbye to terrifying repair bills and hello to peace of mind. Your plan also comes with 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental car options, and so much more. Don't wait till it's too late. Call CarShield now before a breakdown. Protect your wallet. Protect your car with CarShield. Get our best protection ever. Call now. You'll thank me later. 800-965-1292. 800-965-1292. That's 800-965-1292.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor?
Yes, I am.
Yay. My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler. And to say the landscape of the NCAA is always entertaining and a little shaky at times is an understatement. Well, the last little bombshell hit, even though it was not reported accurately, but the thought of the SEC going out all by itself for football, maybe all sports, and breaking off from the NCAA, which is really an interesting idea, and that could just rearrange everything we know when it comes to intercollegiate athletics. Well, a guy that can help us sort this out is Bill Bender from the Sporting News. And Bill, welcome back to the show again. And can you just give us a sense of your feelings about what this could do to college athletics if this really happens? And there's a part of me that thinks some of this might.
Yeah, well, I don't think the SEC is leaving the NCAA. I don't think they can afford to at this point. I mean, but at the same time, they haven't been shy about throwing their weight around. And the notion of a 4-4, 2-2, 1-3 model was being tossed around, and I thought that was ridiculous because you were demanding 25% of a potential 16-team playoff field. And I do think one of the differences between the Big Ten and the SEC right now is the SEC, a lot of its identity is tied to the success it's had on the football field since 1998, the first year of the BCS, with Tennessee winning it. And whereas the NFL, the Big Ten seems more equal. Yeah, we want to have success on the football field, but the TV ratings are nice too with this new 18-team league. And I think the SEC is trying to split the difference there.
Well, let's play a hypothetical game, Bill, where let's say, even though maybe we're trying to call the SEC's bluff, Greg Sankey puts the chips in and says, you know what, we're actually doing it. We're breaking off. We're going to be our own thing. Is the SEC by itself big enough where that works? And where would that leave the Big Ten and the rest of college athletics with the NCAA?
It would leave a gaping hole in college football because of the revenue and the competitive nature of that conference. And I think some of it is rooted in they got their feelings hurt essentially when they had a couple teams left out of the playoff last year, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, that you and I would probably, I think you would agree with me here. I think those teams would beat SMU head to head.
Right.
But they didn't earn the playoff berth the way that SMU did and in the setup that we have now. And if they were to leave and do their own thing, I think the other side effect would be the Big Ten would probably explore that as well. And then you have this super conference model that we've talked about for years. I remember being on a phone call with a former college football coach. This was 2012, and we were talking about the Super League stuff. So that conversation's ever present, even though I don't think we're any closer to it happening.
Well, you brought up that format earlier where the Big Ten and the SEC are vying to see if they can each get 4 automatic bids to the college football playoff if this extends to 16 or whatever. And so then half the field is the Big Ten and the SEC. And I suppose my question to you, Bill, is layered in a couple of different ways. One, revenue. These two conferences do bring in the most revenue, but should that just earn them spots in competition? Is it getting in the way of competitive integrity if it's about winning and earning your spot in from maybe winning your conference championship like it currently is?
Yeah, I think it gets away from that. And, one of the points I made is why guarantee the Big Ten and the SEC half the field when on any given year, I think they're getting between the two conferences at least 8, probably between 9 and 11 each year. And they maybe occasionally in a non-AQ model, they're getting 6. That's what happened with the SEC last year. They got 3 playoff teams. I think the Big Ten with an 18-team conference is getting 4 most years. But why guarantee 50% when, a year like last year, if it were 16 teams, the Big Ten and the SEC would have had 62.5% of the field. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers and starting to sound like a math professor here, but the numbers always work in the SEC and the Big Ten's favor is what I'm trying to say. And I don't need, when you guarantee that, you just make the rest of college football angry. And I don't think in this particular setup or the 16-team setup when we get it, it's worth doing that.
Okay, Bill, next on our hit parade here is the NCAA Men's Division I basketball tournament. There's talk of expansion. We're at 68. Do you think it's going to expand? And if we do, is it good?
I don't know why we would do that. I think, if anything, if you watch the postseason in football and basketball this year, you could make a strong argument that the March Madness model was better than the college football playoff model. I thought the Final Four was riveting. The Sweet 16 in was really good. Now, what was the complaint? We didn't have any upsets. Well, it created really good Sweet 16 matchups and really good Elite Eight matchups. And, Florida, the Final Four was amazing. I know where I was when Houston beat Duke, partially because my basement was flooded afterward. But just the same, I remember exactly how that game ended, and the product was riveting. And I don't see a need to make it 168 times 2 is 126, 136 teams. We don't need that. And sorry, I still carry when I add up. And I like the bracket fitting in one hand, if we're perfectly honest. I like to print out my bracket and have it on one hand. I don't need 3 pages and just as a money grab. So I don't know how you feel about that. I think we're good at 68.
Well, and I would agree with you, Bill. And the thing that keeps kind of escaping me, and I believe there was a piece written about this where Dan Wolken had pointed out recently and said, the NFL expanded its playoffs, but it created new games for TV and a very clear model to revenue coming in. I don't know if the March Madness expansion is necessarily translating to high dollar amounts coming in on top of it. I don't know if I'm just missing something there, but it feels like the play-in games aren't necessarily the huge revenue generators right now. And if you expand it, you're kind of diluting that product and you're not really getting the financial return maybe you're hunting for.
Correct. And there's a risk in adding another weekend too, because to me, what is the best part of the March Madness tradition? It's those of us, I used to skip school. Well, my mom knows, but I would skip school the first Thursday and watch games with buddies. And you still kind of play hooky at work. I mean, obviously we are working, but you're watching tournament games. And I think you're adding another week to that. And I don't know that that's a wise decision financially. You mentioned the NFL playoffs. I'll be honest, I didn't think I would like the extra wild card game. I do, but that's 14 teams from 12. It's not doubling the size of the field or adding more play-in games and, getting away from what it means to make the tournament. And at a certain point, if you do that, you're taking away the value of the week before with the conference tournaments, which to me as a MAC graduate, or if you're a Southern Conference graduate or MVC, OVC, that's the best part, that you win a conference tournament and get a bid. Is it really the same if we're putting 5 MAC teams in? Feels a little bit about like the bowl system we have now.
Well, and since we touched on football for a moment there, Bill, one thing that started to pop into my head, and I suppose entered the dialogue a little bit more here too, Bill, what's the purpose of conference championship weekend anymore in college football if you're talking about maybe 4 automatic bursts per conference? Why play the championship game?
I have no idea. and I've been a guy that said, let's get rid of them. And it gets met with pushback. Doesn't get much pushback up here in Big Ten country because I think, again, you and I have lived in an era where they didn't play one. And we watched, the one that always stands out to me is Wisconsin and Ohio State split a Big Ten championship one year, and Barry Alvarez had a rose, and they needed a result to happen in the Michigan game, and it happened, and everybody moved on. One team went to the Rose Bowl, one didn't, and we were fine. The SEC is a little different, though. That conference championship game is so steeped in that conference's identity since 1992. It's a huge event. I've been fortunate enough to cover a couple. They take that a little more serious. But I would push back to that last year, I probably watched Iowa State and Arizona State, at least for a half, and Clemson, SMU with much more interest than I did Penn State, Oregon, and Georgia, Texas. And those games were great, but I'm like, both teams are in the playoff. So you're onto something there. If they're already in the playoff, let's just take the top 16 teams in the college football playoff rankings and let's go play the postseason like they do in the FCS, D2, D3.
Well, as Bill, always appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So there you go, Bill Benner from the Sporting News. When we come back with more of the Sports Life, a look at Penn State football coming up this year with the voice, Steve Jones. It's all coming up in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584. That's 800-810-1584.
That ought to do it. Totally energy efficient.
Oh no, not again. This time, we're getting help.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the battle of energy efficiency improvements. In this corner, Mr. I can save money and do it on my own. And in this corner, Miss Let's get it done right with some help. Fight!
Or you could just go to avoidenergydrama.com. From sealing your home to helpful loan options, you'll find all the tips and tools you need to stop wasting energy and stay comfortable. Avoidenergydrama.com. Brought to you by Michigan Saves.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. Depression won't show up on an eye chart, and you can't measure it on your bathroom scale. Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own. You won't find a bipolar disorder by looking at a thermometer. Like many other health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a stick-on bandage. So the sooner you seek treatment, the better. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support. That's samhsa.gov/support.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler. And don't forget, auto owners insurance, simple human sense. Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you. Well, as we look at the upcoming football season in the Big Ten, leading the Penn State Nittany Lions for the 12th straight year will be head coach James Franklin. He's done pretty well in his time there, won a lot of games, won the Big Ten title in 2016. In this past season, awfully successful campaign. 13-3 overall, 8-1 in Big Ten play. That was a tie for second and got to the college football playoffs. Well, joining us to talk about this team, Penn State, is Steve Jones, heading into his 26th year as the golden voice of the Nittany Lions. And Steve, thanks for joining us. Well, first question for you. Last season, Penn State had the wins that we talked about. They easily had the best running attack in the Big Ten. Do you think they can project those same kind of numbers this year?
They have the potential for it, Will, because the roster retention was really important for Penn State in the offseason. They're going to return Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. They're returning 4 out of the 5 starters on the offensive line. They're returning Drew Aller, and they're returning the vast majority of that defense. They have a lot of guys back that are fourth-year players. Aller, Singleton, Allen, Drew Shelton, Nick Dawkins, Venga Ioane, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Zakee Whitley. Those are all fourth-year players. And some of them are four-year starters along the way. And I think that's made a big difference in what the outlook of this football team is. There are expectations, and as you and I know, you'd rather be around a group that has expectations than one that just has hope.
Oh, and Steve, I think this program's had expectations for some time. And think back to last year. It was a pretty successful one for Penn State when you think about going to the Big Ten Conference championship game. And you also go to the semis of the college football playoff. I mean, you're the Final Four of college football, and you're right there. And it just feels like, Steve, we have the conversation almost each year of, gosh, Penn State is just a play away. They're a play away from beating Ohio State. They're a play away maybe from beating Notre Dame in the semis and moving on. What is it for Penn State to get over that hump, even though it's a pretty high hump? I mean, you're at the top of the mountain here.
Well, let's face it, there's only one team that clears all the hurdles, and it turned out last year it was Ohio State. And for Penn State, that one play probably was, I think, late in the game against Notre Dame, where they lost on a field goal at just about the end. When you get into big games, there's 4 or 5 plays in every game that swing it for you. You have to be the team that wins at least 3 of them in a game like that. And you don't know when the play is going to be. I mean, one of those plays could be in the first quarter. One of those plays could be in the first half. I felt in the Notre Dame game, in the Orange Bowl, that one of the critical plays was when the backup quarterback, Steve Angeli, entered the game for Notre Dame, and he doing a great job on the drive, throwing the ball, and then he fumbled. And Abdul Carter, who had been playing, his shoulder had been hurt, so he really was playing with one arm in the game, is the guy that's on top of the ball. And if he's got both arms fully capable of making a play, Penn State would have recovered. And I don't think Notre Dame would have recovered from that. So sometimes, it's a play like that is just one way or the other that you've got to make. And you've got to win 3 out of 5 of those plays in a game like that.
Well, Steve, you talked about player retention, which a lot of ball clubs in the conference and maybe even the nation can't make those kind of claims. We look at Ohio State retooling, Oregon's retooling a little bit, especially quarterback. So as you kind of look at this thing, while we talk about cash, you're talking about retention. Can that be the tie break this season for Penn State?
I think it's important because they understand the culture of it. I mean, while the fans will sit there and they'll say, okay, the Oregon game's the whiteout game on September 27th. They have to play at Ohio State on November 1st. That's not how a team thinks or has to think. James Franklin has instilled what he refers to as the 1-0 mentality. Let's be 1-0 at the end of the week. It doesn't matter if 110,000 people in a stadium don't buy into it. All it matters is that there's 120 guys that buy into it in the locker room. And when you have that many players back that have lived it and seen the success of it, you then stay away from. And it's not, look, anybody can get up for the Oregon game. Anybody can get up for the Ohio State game. It's the ability in 1-0 to make sure that when you play Nevada, you take care of business. It's 1-0, make sure when you play Florida International, you take care of business. In other words, the only thing you have is in front of you is that week that you have to win. The team has to believe it. It doesn't matter. The fans can jump around to any game they want, but the team has to believe it. And when you have roster retention, which means you have veterans, they've lived it, and then they can pass that on to the younger players.
Well, Steve, you went through some of the personnel that this Penn State team will have this upcoming season. I want to talk about the offense at some point because that backfield is just dynamic. But on defense, I mean, Penn State's got a history now of edge rushers that come through and really just kind of put the fear of God into opponents. You think of Micah Parsons, you think of Chop Robinson, now Abdul Carter, and it's now being led by the brain of Jim Knowles, who comes over from Ohio State. How does the defense look? And with Jim Knowles there, how does maybe some of those edge rush things and different concepts maybe shape up even differently?
Yeah, that edge rusher you'll talk about this year for Penn State will be denied Dennis Sutton. He's one of those guys coming back for his fourth year. He played really well last year. I thought he played really well in the postseason, especially. And he's going to be the guy among the edge rushers that people will be talking about as time goes. Jim Knowles, it comes in, and look, everybody knows he's one of the top defensive coordinators in the country. And for Penn State to get him, I think was a real statement because, in other words, what they looked at with James Franklin, they said, look, get what you think is the best guy and don't worry about anything else. Well, he perceived Jim Knowles as being the best guy, and he was able to get him. And Knowles brings a lot to the table, and let's face it, he has a national championship pedigree. He knows how to put players in the right position, to make them successful, and I think that's one of the more important things about him.
Steve, do you think this Penn State team is the one that's their time? They've been close, and all of a sudden the pieces are there, and maybe it's just their time. Do you feel that way?
Well, I feel they put themselves in a position because of what they did in the offseason and the players they were able to keep in the offseason to put themselves in a position. There's no doubt that they're a team that is right in the mix of being a playoff team. And once you get to the playoff, anything can happen at that point. You can make runs into the Final Four because now you have the opportunity. It's the teams that you feel bad for that just missed because they're not going to get the opportunity. They have put themselves in a position, and especially with the run they made last year by winning 2 playoff games and getting to the national semifinals, where they have a lot of confidence as to who they are and what they can accomplish. And you have players coming back that feel that they have unfinished business. When players feel they have unfinished business, I think that means a lot to the motivation of a football team.
Steve, taking you over to offense for a moment, you mentioned Drew Aller's back yet again, and you talk about all the opportunities this team had last year and all the success it had. He got a lot of experience last year, and he wasn't short entering into the season on experience, but that backfield of Singleton and Allen, to keep those two together, what's the dynamic here with Penn State's offense where Aller in the passing game and those two running backs can kind of feed off of each other?
Yeah, there's no question because the Penn State is not a one-trick pony offensively. In other words, you don't go in there and say, okay, stop the run and you'll win the game because Aller can beat you. Well, we'll stop Aller. Well, you can't do that because Singleton and Allen can beat you. And it's one thing about Singleton and Allen. You go back, the number of carries between the two of them in each of the 3 years has been relatively even between the two. So you've got 2 running backs that when they get to the fourth quarter of games, they're fresh. And this is where Dalton is so much better now than where they were a couple of years ago. They've become much better pass receivers, especially Singleton. Singleton used to be what I referred to as a body catcher. He'd catch the ball, and the body was like the third hand. Now he puts the hands out there like a wide receiver because he's so confident. They have to replace Tyler Warren at tight end, but Luke Reynolds, I think, is the guy that's going to be I think he has a chance down the road to be an outstanding tight end here at Penn State. Khalil Dinkins is more of a blocking guy. Aller's about to make, when they play Nevada, his 30th start, and you can't put a price on a guy that has his 30th start in his career in the college game. It's also his second year in Andy Koltanicki's system, which I think makes a big difference for him. There's a comfort level he has right now that he may not have had a year ago. He's got 3 new receivers to work with, and Trevor Pena, Kyron Hudson, and Devontae Ross. Penn State doesn't usually go in deep into the transfer portal, but they were able to get those 3 receivers in the portal, and I think they're 3 difference makers for them.
Well, Steve, we've been talking about all these good things about Penn State football, and they're all right on the money, barring the term injury. Is there anything with this group that could trip them up?
Well, like any time you go into any game, there's going to be a threat because you're going to be the biggest game on everybody's schedule. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You're going to be the biggest game on Oregon's schedule, biggest game on Ohio State's schedule, the biggest game on Michigan State's schedule. You're still going to be the biggest game on everybody's schedule. So you're going to get the best shot from everybody every week. I will say this, in the years I've been doing this, and I go back here covering Penn State football since 1980, and I've been on the broadcast now. This is going to be my 34th year. This is probably the deepest team I've seen. And you have to negotiate a long season, and Penn State season, as you mentioned in your first question, was 16 games last year. When you have a 16-game schedule like they did last year, you can't negotiate it with the same 22 guys. You're going to have to negotiate a season like that using 50 guys along the way primarily, because you're going to get guys bumped, bruised, miss a week, miss a couple of weeks, and some even longer term than that. So you have to have the depth to do it. You can't just do it with 22 guys.
As always, Steve, appreciate it.
You bet. Anytime, guys.
Some thoughts from Steve Jones, longtime voice of Penn State. Well, video games, it's a big deal in our culture, and EA Sports has hit the motherlode with their college football series. So, how does a player get his name in that game? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment when the Sports Life continues.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little? But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
This is a potter's field. When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here. It is a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't have to be that way. For as low as $1 a day, you can ensure your family will have the money to pay your funeral expenses. We offer burial insurance plans that pay up to $30,000. Considering the average funeral costs more than $10,000, that's peace of mind for your family. There are no medical exams, your rates won't increase, and your policy cannot be canceled as long as you make your premium payments. Call now to get approved in minutes and ensure your final resting place is more than just a pauper's grave in a potter's field.
800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. That's 800-562-2407. Paid for by Final Expense Direct.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, we have welcomed to the show Kurt Richardson. Now, let me give you his title, Dalton. You ready?
Let's hear it.
He's with the Michigan State football program. His title is Director of Player Engagement, entering his third season. So, Kurt, welcome to the show. And before we get into the big topic here, you ready? Can you explain to everybody exactly kind of what you do day to day?
For sure. And so that's a broad question, but I look at player engagement in the state of college landscape now is essentially I'm trying to help re-recruit our players to come back here every day in terms of give them such a good experience, help them experience the program in such a positive way by making connections on their behalf, dealing with making their life convenient in the beautiful city of East Lansing, Michigan, USA, and then teaching some programming that'll hopefully send them out of our building better than they came into it in terms of social and emotional intelligence, finance management, and overall peer mentoring, making sure I always joke, we try to make sure that these young guys with a lot of opportunities end up being old guys with a lot of opportunities.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. And, there's a lot about your job that's really fascinating and really kind of represents the new landscape of college athletics. But I'll be honest with you, Kurt, and honest with our listeners, the biggest inspiration that got us thinking about you and this job and how unique it is and whatnot is with the college football video game coming out again this summer. You had tweeted after saying that it'll seem trivial to many, but one of the coolest parts of my job is helping the kids get themselves set up to be in the game, which is ironic because this game was the catalyst that created the least cool parts of my job, which feels to sum it up pretty well. But curious about the whole process of it. What does it look like for the student athletes, and how do you help them to get into something like the video game nowadays?
Well, now it's pretty streamlined. And so what's pretty interesting is in this role, you learn a lot about what's called group licenses and group licensing activity. And so the people that make the video game, Electronic Arts, they come to the university with a group deal, obviously, and essentially they've partnered with other NIL partners, including Compass, handles the payments and the taxes and all the stuff for the guys. But essentially, when we're working on getting them in there, if you're an early enrollee, you're a recruit in the class of 2025, and you've been here since January, and you're running around with Coach Mack and getting strong, and then all of a sudden at one day in late May or early June, you get the email that says you're now eligible to download the Compass app and opt into the game. It's a really cool experience to see these guys pop in. Then they've got to wait around, obviously, for their ratings and to see the way the likenesses are coming out. We've started getting some images back on how our guys look into the game. And so it's just a really cool process when you think about most of us that are old heads like me. I came out of high school in 97, 98. You couldn't imagine ever actually getting to be in the game with your real name and face and stuff like that. And so these kids are no different. These kids, as soon as half of them on their official visits or at some point early on when they find out that I work on the pure NIL side, which is the real name, image, and likeness stuff. So not collective payments and not revenue share. One of the first things they ask is like, who handles the EA Sports stuff? And so Darian, who's been with us for years, was their contact, and now that's been passed on to me. And we get them set up in there with just like their contact information, get them all set up for their payments. And then as they have problems, some of them, have to want to change a number inside the system, or, they all complain about whatever rating they get. We don't do a lot with that, obviously, but there's a lot of feedback. But the cool thing is, and what prompted me to send that tweet is the anticipation of it. And so when you start getting emails that says Braylon Collier is ready to be uploaded, or Charles Taplin, or last year Nick Marsh is going to be a featured athlete, it's really cool to be able to call those guys and say, hey, you might want to check your email.
That is pretty cool. And like we said, there's so many different areas to kind of explore that are unique with you. But if we stay with the video game for a second, because I'm going to be honest, and a confession of my own, I love this video game. I waited for the decade plus when we had no video game of the college football edition, and finally got it back, got it in our hands. So I'm excited to get this going and playing the next year's model. But I got to imagine, as you talk about those players, Kurt, their reaction to when they actually see those photos of them in the game, I can only imagine how cool that is for these guys. Can you share some of the testimonies you get to experience and witness?
Absolutely, spot on. I just went through it with Justin Denson, our sophomore free safety from Rhode Island. His came out, and it's just, you just see the guy staring at his phone. He's posting it, and it's like, there's not only did we even couldn't fathom being in the game, but imagine now these guys get the game for free, and depending on their profile or notability, they're getting at the minimum, a couple $1,000s, and on the high end, some of them are getting paid $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to be in the game. So we couldn't even imagine being in the game, let alone to get paid to be in the game, get a free copy of the game. And so the excitement when they're in it, that moment you're describing, Dalton, when they first see themselves in it, and it's almost like watching a Hall of Famer see their bust get revealed. half of them are like, wow, this is really inspiring. And the other half, you can see it's underwhelming. But I think EA does a great job. And for the most part, they get it right. But that's kind of how I would describe that moment is, it's does the likeness look like me? And then what's my rating?
Oh, we talked about the video game a lot here, Kurt. What are some of the other kind of niche things that you have to set up with some of these student athletes that maybe people don't know that your job actually entails you kind of walking them through and getting them set up in some different areas?
Yeah, I mean, it goes from everything from, depending on the level of support our student athletes need, it might be advising them on how to set up their LLC to protect themselves financially, to institutions are now allowed to be involved in generating NIL activities. We can't be compensated for it, but we can be the initiator. We have partners like Playfly and our local businesses who do really great work. Michigan State obviously is a national brand, really a global brand. So we get all kinds of really cool and innovative deals, half because of who we are, but then also half of because who we produce. We've got all kinds of deals where the impetus for how that came to my desk, because like I said, I deal with a lot of the pure NIL, is that the guy or gal who created the thing is a Michigan State grad. And so probably the coolest one other than the game for me in terms of like, as a guy who's getting ready to approach 50 in the next couple of years, who played fullback and my body always hurts, we've got a lot of sports science kind of NIL deals coming up. One with a mattress company that builds mattresses specifically for athletes. We're going to be the pioneer on the front end of that. We've done a deal with Jason Tatum's candy company, which I always thought was a hoot because obviously he played at a different school. Some would even say a rival school in Duke. And we were the premier partner for his candy brand, Small Wins. Jalen Thompson, our defensive end, who's been a standout since he's a freshman, is one of the first brand ambassadors for Tatum's company. And so it's a lot of those kinds of things. Companies that are either ran by Spartans or products that were created by Spartans and really want to find a way to engage with not only the Michigan State brand, but the athletes themselves.
Well, one of the things that's going on in your world is there's a lot of uncertainty on many, many fronts. So, Curtis, you go through the things you've been able to orchestrate for student athletes. How difficult is it when you really don't know what the rules may or may not be in, say, 6 months?
Well, it's a really interesting timing because what I was doing immediately before this is I just got off a webinar with Tony Petiti and learned what the rules are going to be, which I can't share. But yeah, for our past year of our life, Will, that's been exactly that. There's so much uncertainty. And the only solace is that, the other, 50 or 60 P4 schools are all dealing with the same stuff. And so you try to leverage relationships. I've got several counterparts in the Big Ten who have been able to help. Darian was a pioneer in this space, and so he's got a lot of contacts. And then also Michigan State, I think, in terms of the pure NIL, like I said, just from a global brand, the people that were early adopters at working with student athletes, I think we got a lot of those first at bats. And so I think we learned really quickly how to best execute the visions for those, how to help our student athletes articulate their brand proposition, understand their social media reach, understand the metrics of, what gets done and why it gets done and why deal sizes are particular ways. And so one of the takeaways of the call we were just on was just how deals are going to be evaluated in the future. And to tell you the truth, I feel pretty good that we've been pretty close to the way this thing is all going to shake out. There's some gray areas that they're getting ready to finalize as this house settlement comes into play. But I think the way we're going to land in this is that we've been well positioned to create everything we've been created is going to survive kind of the new threshold of what do deals look like when they get audited in this new model through NIL Go, which is the new kind of enforcement arm of the Big Ten.
Well, and trying to picture ourselves in your shoes, I feel like that's about as secure and a best position you could feel like you could be in this ever-changing landscape. But, I mean, you talk about gray areas, and Will brought up the cloud of uncertainty that kind of sits there all the time. Outside of those two things, I imagine with NIL, there's so many headaches. What are the other areas that really cause headaches for you, maybe for specifically Michigan State, but you could even make it more broad to people at other schools that are trying to carry out the same duties that you are?
Well, I think the number one thing is, and we do a great job at this, but you're dealing with young people. And so I always describe our job as being in the young people business. So you got to have a lot of grace with people. But Uncle Sam is not known for their grace. And so I worry often at schools, not necessarily ours, but I don't for any reason think that we're batting 100%. But getting the taxes done on these things, remembering that so-and-so is going to have a 1099 for 1,000 or 5,000 or 500, and making sure these guys understand, they got to pay on that. And so I do see a world where, unfortunately, you're looking in 5-7 years and you're going to have some young people who this should have been like a special time in their earning potential, as well as, their lives just as being young people who, if they don't have the right advice and they don't take the right steps, they're going to be penalized. We've got official visits going on right now as we're recording this. And I tell every person, every parent, guardian, aunt, uncle, my big fear is that we're going to have some young people go to federal prison because they didn't get good advice. So obviously that motivates me to stay up to date on what's going on. That's probably the biggest headache. Tracking. Young people aren't notoriously well known for keeping track of documents like 1099s. And so the better someone is at NIL, the more headache it becomes. We've got some people who have done very well here. Jalen Thompson, again, comes to mind, a guy that's done a lot of pure NIL deals. And so keeping track of 15, 16, 17, 1099s is not everybody's cup of tea. He does well with it. But then knowing, again, like we talk about, making sure they have real good advice on how they structure their businesses. And we've got a lot of resources. The NCAA has resources. Big Ten has resources on making sure they're protecting themselves financially, and then also just being compliant. And then the reality is these people are self-employed. Like we focus heavily on making sure they know they're a business. And part of being in business is, I always tell these guys, you want to make sure you're set up to pay Uncle Sam as little as possible. It doesn't matter what you make. It's all about what you keep. And with that comes like why we teach so much about money management here. Is early advice I got when I was a young person was, as soon as you start getting money, you're going to find yourself in one or two categories: an interest earner or an interest payer. And so we try to make sure our guys are in the former.
Okay, Kurt, before we let you go, here comes the final question. I think this is the biggest one. How are you going to get Dalton and I in one of these video games? Come on.
Well, it's maybe not the biggest question, but it does sound like the biggest challenge. But I'll tell you this, man. You know this because we know each other outside of this. Your voice, man. Let me be your voice agent, Will. We'll take this thing on the road. You've got the thing. You got the voice of my childhood. Let's patent that thing. Let's get on the phone with the International PTSO Trademark Association and see what we could do there. We need the Will avatar as soon as possible. I'll take you over. We partner with a studio here in town that builds avatars for athletes similar to what the game is. We gotta get Digital Will going soon.
Sign me up. I'm ready.
All right.
Well, Kurt, really appreciate it. Hope to see you soon.
Great being on, guys. I appreciate you.
Kurt Richardson, Michigan State's Director of Player Engagement for the football program. And Dalton, throughout the interview, he mentioned this Darian guy. Well, Darian Harris is the person he's talking about, former linebacker at Michigan State, and was an assistant AD for a handful of years at MSU. The reason why he left, he's now joined the New York Giants of the NFL as their Director of Player Engagement. Well, when we come back with more of the Sports Life, our parting shots in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, months, you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. That's 800-948-6912.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Anybody ready for a burger?
I'm State Fire Marshal Rich Miller, reminding everyone to think safety first when it comes to outdoor grilling, whether it's charcoal or gas. Never overload your grill with food. Excess fat and grease will create large flames. Grill outdoors and never inside or in a garage. Never leave a grill unattended and always keep a fire extinguisher nearby. For more tips on safe grilling, visit the Bureau of Fire Services website at michigan.gov/BFS.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler. Fun show this week. Always good to visit with Bill Bender of the Sporting News to try to get the lay of this crazy NCAA landscape. Penn State looks good to go, according to Steve Jones. And now we know how we can get into a video game, Dalton and I. So with that, it is now time for our parting shots.
And it's time to let you know how you can listen to this show at Sports Life Now. Is where you can follow us on Twitter or X. That's again at Sports Life Now. We post all those interviews and the entire show, so make sure you check us out and give us a follow. For my parting shot, I'm actually going to take a look back at that college football video game because, look, this went on a hiatus of a decade plus where college football fans were just kind of missing and longing for this game until it finally returned this last summer. College Football 25 came out, and here's some of the popularity numbers of this. And by the way, the next year's game comes out in about a month, so some of that will probably spill into this program over the next month. But just to give you an idea of how popular this game is, this video game, which again resembles all these different schools, your favorite players, so on and so forth, was able to, in the first 2 weeks of release, generate $500 million of revenue. We don't really have numbers since the first 2 weeks, but it only took 2 weeks to hit $500 million in revenue. It also became the largest sports-selling video game of all time, and the biggest selling video game for the year 2024 of any genre, not even limited to just sports. That's how big this college football video game is, and it returns again in another month.
Those are crazy numbers. They really are. They're crazy numbers. Well, Dalton, I remember when we were first talking about the new 12-team playoffs. And the comment about the Big Ten was it might be easier to win the national championship than the Big Ten. Well, after we were talking to Steve Jones and the great year Penn State had, but they finished second with that 8-1 mark, tied with Indiana, I took a look at the final standings. Oregon 9-0, they're the champs. We talked about Indiana, Penn State. They were next, 8-1, and then our fourth place team was Ohio State, the national champion.
Go figure.
Go figure. So that's a wrap for our show for this week. And we should also know that you can find us wherever you find your podcasts, like SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple. And make sure to check us out and hit subscribe. As always, thanks to the Big Ten Network. The Sports Life is produced by Dalton Shetler. Our executive producer is Wendy Hart. So on behalf of Dalton Shetler, I'm Will Tiemann, and thanks for your time.